The Dead is the last short story of the collection. It was not part of the original draft. Joyce added it later, because he was worried of his artistic objectivity. The view that Gabriel, the protagonist, achieved at the end is the expression of supreme neutrality that Joyce saw as the beginning of artistic awareness. The story opens up in the house of Kate and Julia Morgan, who are hosting the annual dance and dinner party at or just before January 6th. They are waiting for their favorite nephew, Gabriel Conroy, and his wife, Greta. Gabriel interacts with many guests at the party, including Miss Sivers, a strong supporter of Irish culture, where we see an interesting exchange of opinion, culminating with Gabriel's statement of his hate for Ireland. At the end of dinner, Gabriel delivers a speech where he insists that people should not linger in the past and the dead, but live and rejoice in present with the living. The party goes on, and when it's about to end, Gabriel sees that his wife, Greta, is in some way detached from the present, lost in a song that is played. When the guests are all leaving, Greta is still in the living room, lost in thoughts. Gabriel tries to recall to Greta the time when they were fiancés, but she doesn't seem to be relieved. In fact, she bursts into tears. Greta then confesses that she was taken by the song because a man in her youth had sung it to her. She tells her husband about this boy, Michael Fury, who was in love with her and had died after waiting outside her window in the cold. Gabriel is stunned by this revelation. They go to bed, and while Greta is fast asleep, he remains awake, thinking about his own mortality, and he looks at the snow outside the window and imagines the snow covering the grave of Michael Fury in a distant graveyard. In this short story, Gabriel is the character of whom Joyce focuses, and through him and his revelation, the reader is guided to the final deliberation. Let's focus on him then.
"Is it snowy again, Mr. Conroy?" asked Lily. "Yes, Lily," he answered, "and I think we're in for a night of it." "Tell me, Lily," he said in a friendly tone, "do you still go to school?" "Oh, no, sir," she answered. "I'm done schooling this year and more." "Oh, then," said Gabriel gaily, "I suppose we'll be going to your wedding one of these fine days with you young men, eh?" The girl glanced back at him over her shoulder and said with great bitterness, "The man that is now is only the palaver of what they can get out of you." Gabriel colored as if he felt he had made a mistake, and without looking at her, kicked off his galoshes and flicked actively with his muffler at his patent leather shoes. "Oh, Lily," he said, thrusting it into her hands, "it's Christmas time, isn't it? Just here's a little—" "Well, thank you, sir." He would only make himself ridiculous by quoting poetry to them which they could not understand. They would think that he was airing his superior's education. He would fail with them just as he had failed with the girl in the pantry. He had taken up a wrong tone. His whole speech was a mistake from the first to the last, an utter failure. Gabriel found himself partnered with Miss Ivors. She was a frank-mannered, talkative young lady, with a freckled face and prominent brown eyes. "I have a crowd to pluck with you." "With me?" said Gabriel. She nodded her head gravely. "What is it?" asked Gabriel, smiling at her solemn manner. "Who is J.C.?" answered Miss Ivors, turning her eyes upon him. Gabriel coloured and was about to knit his brows as if he did not understand, when she said bluntly, "Ah, innocent Amy, I have found out that you write first for the Daily Express. Now, aren't you ashamed of yourself?" "Why should I be ashamed of myself?" asked Gabriel, blinking his eyes and trying to smile. "Well, I'm ashamed of you," said Miss Ivors frankly. "To say you'd write for a paper like that. I didn't think you were a West Briton." He wanted to say that literature was above politics, but they were friends of many years' standing, and their careers had been parallel, first at the university and then as teachers. He could not risk a grandiose phrase with her. He continued blinking his eyes and trying to smile, and murmured lamely that he saw nothing political in writing reviews of books. When they turned to cross had come, he was still perplexed and inattentive. Miss Ivors promptly took his hand in a warm grasp and said in a soft, friendly tone, "Of course, I was only joking. Come, we cross now." "Go where?" asked Miss Ivors. "Well, you know, every year I go for a cycling tour with some fellows and so." "But where?" asked Miss Ivors. "Well, we usually go to France or Belgium or perhaps Germany," said Gabriel awkwardly. "Why do you go to France and Belgium," said Miss Ivors, "instead of visiting your own land?" "Well," said Gabriel, "it's partly to keep in touch with the languages and partly for a change." "And haven't you your own language to keep in touch with?" "Irish?" asked Miss Ivors. "Well," said Gabriel, "if it comes to that, you know Irish is not my language." "Oh, to tell the truth," retorted Gabriel suddenly, "I'm sick of my own country. Sick of it." "Why?" asked Miss Ivors. Gabriel did not answer, for his retort had heated him. "Why?" repeated Miss Ivors. They had to go visiting together, and as he had not answered her, Miss Ivors said warmly, "Of course, you have no answer?"
In these two extracts, we can see that although Gabriel is a man of authority, he cannot stand discussion, neither with the servant, Lily, nor with a colleague of his, Miss Avery, who quarrels his non-existing national sympathies and cannot answer properly. This is another example of suspending life. Gabriel is trapped between a life that he is supposed to live and the fact that he can't meet the requirements of this icon, and deep inside he thinks himself of a failure.
A fat brown goose lay at one end of the table, and at the other end, on a bed of creased paper strewn with sprigs of parsley, lay a great ham, stripped of its outer skin and peppered over with crust crumbs. A neat paper frill rounds its shin, and beside this was a round of spiced beef. Between these rivers' ends ran parallel lines of side dishes, two little minsters of jelly, red and yellow, a shallow dish full of blocks of blancmange and red jam, a large green leaf-shaped dish with a stalk-shaped handle on which lay bunches of purple raisins and peeled almonds, a companion dish on which lay a solid rectangle of Smyrna figs, a dish of custard topped with grated nutmeg, a small bowl full of chocolates and sweets wrapped in gold and silver papers, and a glass of vase in which stood some tall celery stalks. In the center of the table there stood, as sentries to a fruit stand which upheld a pyramid of oranges and American apples, two squat, old-fashioned decanters of cut glass, one containing port and the other dark sherry. On the closed square piano, a pudding in a huge yellow dish lay in waiting, and behind it were three squads of bottles of stout and ale and minerals, drawn up according to the colors of their uniforms, the first two black with brown and red labels, the third and smallest squad white, with transverse green sashes.
In this extract, we can see again the symbol of food. It recalls the prison of routine, as it is always the same food every year, and it's presented with military language, giving more a sensation of danger and death instead of the normal sense of conviviality associated with food and parties. The party is also a deadening routine that makes existence lifeless in Dubliners. All the events are repeated every year. Freddie Mellis arrives drunk. Everyone always dances the same step. Everyone gathers at the table to eat, and always the same food.
"And do you mean to say," asked Mr. Brownie incredulously, "that a chap can go down there and put up there as if it were a hotel and live on the fat of the land and then come away without paying anything?" "Oh, most people give some donation to the monastery when they leave," said Mr. Mary Jane. "I wish we had an institution like that in our church," said Mr. Brownie candidly. He was astonished to hear that the monks never spoke, got up at 2 in the morning and slept in their coffins. He asked what they did it for. "That's the rule of the order," said Aunt Katy firmly. "Yes, but why?" asked Mr. Brownie. Aunt Katy repeated that it was the rule. That was all.
Here we see how religion is just another deadening routine that makes no sense. Yet still people follow it. With the statement, "That's the rule," Aunt Kate closes the conversation and shows the reader her suspended life. She doesn't inquire. She just accepts things as they are.
A new generation is growing up in our midst. But we are living in a skeptical and, if I may use the phrase, a thought-tormented age. And sometimes I fear that this new generation, educated or hyper-educated as it is, will lack those qualities of humanity, hospitality, and kindly humor which belonged to an older day. But yet, continued Gabriel, there are always in gatherings such as this sadder thoughts that will recur to our minds, thoughts of the past, of youth, of changes, of absent faces that we miss here tonight. Our path through life is strewn with many such sad memories, and were we to brood upon the always, we could not find the heart to go on bravely with our work among the living. We have all of us living duties and living affections which claim, and rightly claim, our strenuous endeavors. Therefore, I will not linger on the past. I will not let any gloomy moralizing intrude upon us here tonight. Here we are gathered together for a brief moment from the bustle and rush of our everyday routine. We are met here as friends, in the spirit of good fellowship, as colleagues, also to a certain extent, in the true spirit of camaraderie, as the guests of What shall I call them? The three graces of Dublin musical world.
This is a part of Gabriel's speech at the party. If you look closer, you can see how Gabriel himself is betrayed by his own words, as he claimed that the past is for the dead and the present is for the living. But he also fears that humanity and hospitality are qualities that the new generation will lack. Indeed, this is a tribute to the past, and it's a clear example of what Joyce meant for the memory of the dead haunts the living.
I am thinking about a person long ago who used to sing that song. And who was the person long ago? Asked Gabriel, smiling. It was a person that I used to know in Galway when I was living with my grandmother, she said. The smile passed away from Gabriel's face. A dull anger began to gather again at the back of his mind, and the dull fires of his lust began to glow angrily in his veins. Someone you were in love with? He asked ironically. It was a young boy I used to know, she answered, named Michael Furey. He used to sing that song, The Lass of Aughrim. He was very delicate. I can see him so plainly, she said after a moment. Such eyes as he had, big, dark eyes, and such an expression in them. An expression. He is dead, she said at length. He died when he was only 17. Isn't it a terrible thing to die so young as that? What was he? Asked Gabriel, still ironically. He was in the gasworks, she said. Gabriel felt humiliated by the failure of his irony and by the evocation of this figure from the dead, a boy in the gasworks. While he had been full of memory of their secret life together, full of tenderness and joy and desire, she had been comparing him in her mind with another. I suppose you were in love with this Michael Furey, Greta? He said. I was great with him at that time, she said. What did he die of so young, Greta? Consumption, was it? I think he died for me, she answered. A vague terror seized Gabriel at this answer, as if at that hour, when he had hoped to triumph, some impalpable and vindictive being was coming against him, gathering forces against him in its vague world.
This is Greta's confession. We can clearly see how the memory of the dead, Michael Furey, haunts both Greta, who remembers him clearly, and Gabriel, who feels in combat with this dead man over his wife's love.
Generous tears filled Gabriel's eyes. He had never felt like that himself toward any woman, but he knew that such a feeling must be love. The tears gathered more thickly in his eyes, and in the partial darkness he imagined he saw the form of a young man standing under a dripping tree. Other forms were near. His soul had approached that region where dwell the vast hosts of the dead. He was conscious of, but could not apprehend, their wayward and flickering existence. His own identity was fading out into a grey, impalpable world. A few light taps upon the pair made him turn to the window. It had begun to snow again. It was falling on every part of dark central plain. It was falling, too, upon every part of the lonely churchyard on the hill where Michael Furey lay buried. It lay thickly drifted on the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate on the barren thorns. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe, and faintly falling like the descent of their last end upon all the living and the dead.
This is the final part of the story. Greta is asleep and Gabriel is thinking about what he has just discovered about his wife. The death of Michael makes him sad because he acknowledges that Michael had a loving ache that Gabriel never had. He realizes that people who live a short life in passion live more fully than anyone else. But in the end, he looks outside the window and he sees the snow and remembers that the snow is covering Michael's grave as well as his, as he is not really living, but he is more living a dead life. The snow is the final symbol that merges death and life together. So thank you for watching this video. If you like it, please don't forget to press like at the end of it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more episodes of Ease Your Quarantine with Literature. And if you have time, you can also like our Facebook page, All You Can Learn at Easy. Remember that you can request any literature explanation or video that you want on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching and goodbye.